Welcome back into the Vandy Sports Podcast alongside Joey Dwyer and Luke Wyatt. We're back with another football mailbag episode, the Roundtable Podcast, minus Chris Lee. He's on dad duty today, so a special day for him and David. But we're back for another football podcast, and we're just going to run through some of the mailbag questions. Obviously, there's no wins and losses to talk about, but we do have a loaded mailbag, and it's brought to you by Sutherland & Belk Injury Law Firm. Another big thanks to all of the sponsors that make this podcast possible. So yeah, we'll be shouting them out throughout the rest of the season, of course, as we get into basketball and baseball as well. But let's start. Luke, Joey, and I have been at practice, and we just talked before we recorded. Had a really good question from VA72. I'm curious about where the football coaches will be located during the games, sidelines or coaching box for both offense and defense. Primarily, I'm interested in the locations of Beck, Kill, Lee, and his new helper from the NFL, who I think he's talking about, Steve Gregory, I want to say, who appears to be for the defense what Kill is for the offense. So, Luke, we were just talking about it. Lay out to the listeners what you kind of laid out to us. Obviously, nothing's official yet, and the scrimmages will be a big telling point in this, right? Because they'll be at the stadium. But kind of lay out what you laid out to us a few minutes ago.
Yeah, Coach Kill will definitely be on the field. Clark had expressed to me that now that you have the iPads, that it's not as important up top to see what, basically what you see up top now is stuff you can use for adjustments at halftime and so forth, but it's not as important as it used to be. So Coach Kill will definitely be on the field. I think Coach Beck will be upstairs. As far as Gregory, I'm not sure whether he'll still be on the field with Clark. Clark probably wants him at arm's length, so he may still be on the field with Clark as well. It used to be there was a limit of how many coaches you could have on headsets. That's been thrown out. You can now have unlimited as long as you've got bandwidth and you've got enough with your headset system. You can have 12 guys. I gave Clark a little bit of my knowledge. I said, don't have too many voices on there. If you do, you got to have some guys that can talk only, some guys that can listen only, because sometimes people start talking over each other and you have issues. But the main thing from today is Coach Kill will definitely be on the field.
Joey, to me, that's big, right? And we didn't always know that was going to be the case, right? Luke, we've talked about that. 2 months ago, we didn't know if Kill was going to be on the sidelines and even be able to wear a headset. But he can. I mean, he's a coach, right? He's not a consultant that is in an office in a different city, right? He's here, and we've seen him. He's been loud at practice, but I think that's a big deal.
Yeah, he's had more of an impact than I thought he would have, and I knew he would be a piece to what they do, but he's really getting after guys every day. Like, you hear him probably 10 times a practice yelling at somebody, and there's probably more than that we're not hearing. So he is not a figurehead or a guy who's in the offices. He's hands-on, he's on the field, and he's bringing a different energy than they have. I think we talked to Brian Longwell today, and he said the practices are more intense this year, probably by a decent bit. So I think that's largely attributed to what Jerry Kill is bringing, especially offensively. There was a false start, and Jerry Kill was not happy about it.
No, and he's heard. His voice is heard. He's loud, and Luke Vanderbilt needed that. I think we all.
We talked about it, and we were a very young coaching staff for the entire time Clark's been here, really. And bringing in Coach Beck and Coach Kill has been critical. I tell you guys, let's be thankful that New Mexico State beat Auburn and Clark had that to refer to, because we may be sitting here talking about a totally different scenario if that game never happened.
Probably right. We'd be talking about Pavia a little bit differently as well from that game. Section M19, kind of similar to what you talked about with Brian Longwell about practices feeling different, especially defensively. Well, Clark Lee is the defensive coordinator. How much of an impact does Clark Lee, being the DC, actually have on this team? Luke, we'll start with you on that one.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I just, guys, by the way, my nephew's in town that used to work with me, and we went over to see some guys and went by and saw Clark, and he was in the defensive line meeting room with Javon Hay. He popped his head out and talked to us for about 10 minutes, and I was telling him, I said, wipe that smile off your face. He said, what do you mean? I said, I can just see it, how happy you are doing what you're doing right now. Instead of being sitting in your office waiting to something else to come across your desk right now, You're coaching. You're in your element. You have total trust in what you've got going on the other side of the ball. So you're still making the final decisions on everything. However, you're isolated to what you know best on the football field. And I said that's going to mean tons to this football team moving forward, and the chances of us improving and getting to where we all want us to be. I think it's huge. Clark, if you look at his Notre Dame defenses, just go watch some film of Notre Dame when he coached. Clark's a numbers guy. Now, yeah, we don't have the athletes Notre Dame had, obviously, that went to the, quote, Final Four in football. But if you just watch the scheme and how much different it is, if our kids play with their smarts, they're going to be where they're supposed to be on the football field. It'll just be, do they make the plays?
Joey, to me, and we've talked about this, he didn't want to have to do this, right? And I think most head coaches don't want to have to do this. But, and I don't want to say it was a desperate move, but it feels to me that this was a sense of urgency that I've got to do this. I need to make this my defense. And you feel that with the players. Every time, Luke and I have talked about this, every time we ask a player about Clark Lee taking over the defense, they start laughing. They kind of get giddy. Like you said with Clark, like, with the smile, it's just better. It's been better so far, objectively.
For sure. Brian Longwell today also said that Clark Lee is very hands-on with them. He's very interactive with them. And I think that's another important piece to this. That not only helps kind of their vision, it helps their development, because Clark Lee, I think, is about as good of a defensive mind as they have in the program. So I think that's another thing to note. I don't know that it's going to give them 2 more wins, but I do think they're going to be more competent, and I think their guys are going to be a little bit more connected, and they've kind of echoed that throughout the pressers as well, that they're different, and that's a good thing. Clark Lee, you look at what he's done at Notre Dame. He's one of the best defense coordinators in the country. And I don't know if they're going to have one of the best defenses in the country. I would seriously doubt that. But I think they're going to be improved just because of the structure they have and because of the preciseness that they're going to operate with. I think is going to be a bit higher than it was last year.
Eye test is what's going to be better.
They've looked better.
Just watching this defense. All right, VU Superior, 3-part question here. Back to the defense. With the Ricky Wright putting on more weight during the offseason, does he project to move up a level on defense? Move up a level on defense. I'm not sure what that means. Maybe as a starter, right?
Or go to linebacker.
As a different position as well. Like, is he a safety? Is he a linebacker? Where does Ricky Wright fit in here, Luke?
I think he's a linebacker now. The only reason he would play safety is if we had some injuries and he was forced to play safety. DeRicky he's not able to flip his hips and cover somebody the way he should. DeRicky is a linebacker, and I think DeRicky could be the best version of DeRicky if they keep him at linebacker.
I'd probably agree.
I'd probably agree as well. I don't know what exactly it's going to look like because he's still listed as a safety. I don't know. You follow the defense more closely than I do. I'm the offensive guy now, but I think he's been at safety a good bit still, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's been a little bit of safety. I think he's played a little bit of that star position. And again, right now through 2 days, you can't take too much from that, but yeah, I would have to agree with Luke there, but we'll see. That room is all of a sudden, he returns from Texas A&M. A lot of people forget about that room. All of a sudden has gotten a little bit more crowded. So with some talented players, so that'll be interesting. Back to offense. Tim Beck mentioned we will not have the same offense as the other SEC teams, nor will we have the same plays week to week. Any thoughts as to what he means there, Luke?
Well, you guys are so young. Y'all weren't born when Vanderbilt ran what we're going to run this year. Watson Brown ran a version of what this is. It's basically a lot of trickery, a lot of different formations. You run the same plays, but they're out of different formations, a lot of eye candy. It's something that, and I think Coach Beck may have alluded to this, when we play Virginia Tech, after that's over with, you can take that game film and throw it away for offense because you won't see the same offensive plays the next week. You'll see so many different formations. It'll be like, you got to keep guys guessing. And when you're not the most talented team on the field, except for when we play Alcorn and Ball State and maybe Georgia State, the talent level, we're not going to be at the talent level of our opponent. So you have to do some things to create mismatches, get the numbers advantage. And football really, guys, and y'all know this, y'all are two smart young men. Football, you don't have to be a genius. You just have to realize how many's in the box and how many's not in the box and where your advantage is and play to those advantages. And if you have a signal caller that can execute what you want, then you'll be fine.
And we got a chance to talk to Richie Hoskins today, a guy who I think is going to be a leader on one of the leaders on this offense. He was glowing about, just another giddy about the new coach and Tim Beck and even Jerry Kill within this offense. Just, you never know what they're going to call. You never know where you're going to be as a receiver. You might be coming in motion and then catching a triple option toss. You never know.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I was watching them a couple weeks back, and I've said this before publicly. They ran, I think it was in the Conference USA Championship game, they ran it up the middle 6 times on the first drive. Every single formation, every single motion looked different. It looked different every single time they ran it up the middle. It was either a different back, or Eli Stowers would run up the middle, or they'd have a guy in motion, or the formation would be complex. It's going to be a lot of eye candy. It's going to be different. And we've said this before, but Vanderbilt needed that. Vanderbilt cannot operate the same way offensively and expect to have the same results as other teams with the talent level being what it is. They have to be unique. And I think they finally have an identity offensively that they're going to play to. And the results aren't there yet, but Billy, they had to do that.
Yeah, they weren't unique last year. As we know, they
they were unique.
Well, you're in the wrong way. They were definitely unique, but what they were trying to do was not what was going to work. I think we didn't take long to figure that out. Jerry Kill mentioned the defense has already improved greatly from last season. In my opinion, for this to be the case, the secondary will need to be a team strength. Is this possible without Marlon Jones, which is official now that personal health issue for Marlon Jones, still a part of the team. They expect to have him back, still a part of the brotherhood. Clark said that earlier today. So no Marlon Jones. Luke, obviously disappointing. The secondary, do they have to be a team strength? Yeah, I don't know they have to be the best unit on the team, but like most positions, they've got to be better than they were last year.
No question. I think you've got to find 4 guys that you can roll in and out, 2 on each side, and feel really good about it. Last year we're putting guys out there that because we're not getting any pass rush or having to guard people too long. I mean, honestly, guys, I don't care who you are. If the receivers in this league are way too good for you to give them that much time to throw the football. If you'll remember, there was a lot of times that our first 2 downs on defense, we'd be okay. We get somebody in 3rd and 11, 3rd and 20, and they pick up the first down because we couldn't get to the quarterback.
Joey Martell Height, a guy that played a lot last year, should be more prepared this season, right? I mean, he was a true freshman last year. But Colby Taylor is a guy we've looked at the last couple of days at camp as a guy you always hear his voice, right? He brings the energy. He's a veteran. He's, 6'4", 6'3", 6'4", like long guy.
6'3".
You'd like to have 3 more Colby Taylors, but he's going to be a leader in that room and has to perform for this team.
Yeah, they're going to have guys step up, and more in the way than at times they even did last year. Tyson Russell, I think, has to get better, and it seems like he has gotten better. I don't know what that looks like, but he's got to be better. Martell Height has to take a step. Trudeau Berry's got to take a step. A lot of guys have to take steps, and I think they're really relying on Colby Taylor. I don't know that I love the corners. I think I really like the safeties, though.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Columbiano Door, can Micah Bell or Tristan Brown add much-needed speed to the wide receiver production? Last year that receiver room was pretty fast with London Humphreys and Jade McGowan, and Will Shepard's not necessarily a speed type guy, but a pretty good receiver. But they definitely, Micah Bell is a guy that has similar speed to London Humphreys. I think will surprise some people, whether it's a jet sweep, whether it's a go route with him, Luke. But Tristan Brown he's been pretty active these last couple of days, and he's another guy you can't forget about. So yeah, I mean they certainly add speed, an element this team desperately needs.
Listen, guys, with the speed that he has, he doesn't even have to catch the football. You just got to be able to flood a zone, take some people out of the mix where you're working with half the field. If you can run some fly routes with him and just take some people out of the way, that's where we're going to be throwing the ball to those tight ends and guys out of the backfield. I will make a prediction. We will probably throw more to the tight end this year than we have in 25 years at Vanderbilt. And just having speed at the receiver position, not necessarily to catch the football. again, just to stretch the defense is going to be huge.
Here's a good question here from Vandy Fitz. Here's to hoping Clark Lee doesn't hold back his offense with defense-centric game planning like Coach Mason did with Ludwig, which is interesting, Luke, and obviously, Joey, you weren't here at that time, but Coach Mason did a similar thing, took over the defense. Andy Ludwig, the offensive coordinator, who, of course, now is at Utah, is a really good offensive coordinator. But it did feel like at times, Luke, where this is about the defense being the better unit, and you've got it. That's the way you have to play. But at Vanderbilt, I don't think that's a dumb plan. Like I think that's, you're not going to outscore many teams, especially in the SEC with this style of offense specifically.
I will say this, if you remember, I was at Vanderbilt when that happened. I was still working there, and Coach Mason was very much still hands-on, working with Ludwig on play calling, even though obviously he didn't call the plays. Let me word this correctly. He still had a big hand on what the game plan was, whereas I think Clark is going to let Coach Kill and Coach Beck do what they want to do offensively, and it's not going to matter. He's not going to be defensive-centric. It's going to be, you guys do what you do. We'll stop them. It's our job to stop them. So I think, again, time of possession, I think we'll be better at that. A lot better at that. And I don't think the defense will be on the field for as many plays.
Joey, that time of possession stat, going back and watching the New Mexico State-Auburn game and some of the other New Mexico State games, I'd say that just about every game. Now, it's a different conference. You're coming to the SEC. It's obviously going to be a little bit harder.
A little bit.
But even if you can cut last year's margin of the time of possession, and even we know what the plus-minus was, right? But, even if you can cut that a little bit, that'll help.
Yeah. I want to go back to the first question. Clark, when he talked about the quarterback battle, talked about how he trusted Kill and Beck to kind of handle it. I don't know that he's going to be incredibly hands-on with the offense. I think those guys are guys that he feels he can trust with it. I think that's a good thing for him. Just he has guys who he can hand it over to, and like you said, trusts. He said Tim Beck's really going to be judged on what he does with the offense, and I think that's kind of where it's going to lie. Clark Lee obviously knows it's going to be different, but it's essential for him to have somebody he can lean on, and I think he's got two guys there. Now, does that make it perfect? Obviously not. Conference USA is a lot different than the SEC. Tim Beck, has he been a SEC offense coordinator? No. But I think there's a path to them being better, but we've got to see it. I think the first thing, though, that comes to mind is just trust.
Yeah. G Barks 24. This is a fall camp specific question. So for Joey and I, how does this team's resolve compare to last season so far from spring ball and fall camp as well? We talked about it today when we were watching inside. It just feels like there's more connectivity between coach and player. Mm-hmm. But I forget who said it today. It's more of a player-led group. Obviously Kill will have his voice heard, but Clark, he's usually in the same spot most practices, kind of looking behind the defense and tracking what's happening. But a lot more communication, whether it's C.J. Taylor, Sandy Neola's a guy you hear a lot, Marlon Sewell. And even from the quarterbacks, the quarterbacks are louder. They're more communicative. And I think you just didn't see that same level of connectivity. And now the resolve, we'll see. Maybe we'll get a better idea scrimmage-wise. But I think that points to the resolve of having this team be player-led. And we've kind of seen it, especially today. Yeah,
I was going to ask Clark today if he would have talked. He was too busy getting distracted by Luke, I guess. Luke was really killing the media time today. But Clark, I wanted to ask him what he thought of the mental makeup of the group, because it does seem like it's better than it had been. It feels like you said, they're more connected. They have a chance to be more player-led. And he talked about the excitement, and it feels like it's a little bit more genuine this year. And that doesn't mean they're going to be awesome, but it feels like they see a path that maybe some people on the outside don't see.
Yeah, I want to throw this second part of this question at you, Luke. Last year, when a turnover or big play happened, Vandy had a difficult time responding to the moment. Does the injection of new blood and coaching change the attitude of this team?
Well, it remains to be seen. Obviously, we can't have the situation we had last year where early in ball games, throughout the ball game period, we made boneheaded mistakes, and you had a quarterback quarterbacks that would throw the ball in the other team's hands. You can't do that at Vanderbilt. You can't do that anywhere. So I think this way this team is more successful. And again, I'm a realist. I know this team isn't going to win 8 games, but to be able to be in games in the fourth quarter, and except for a couple of occasions where you're just completely outmanned, they have to not turn the football over. And if we don't do that, if we don't turn the football over, this offense will move the chains. It may not score touchdowns. We may have to settle for a few field goals in the SEC, but we'll at least take 5 and 6 minute drives and keep our defense rested and off the field. That's the formula for this team. They're not going to be able to score 40 points a game, but I think this team would be a touchdown better on offense and a touchdown better on defense, and that should result in 3 more wins.
Godor's 94. Here's a fire away hot take question here. In terms of wins, best case and worst case scenario. I'll start. I think the best case scenario is 5 wins for this team. I think the worst case is 2.
Mm-hmm. That's what I had as well.
Okay.
I look at the schedule. They could be twice as good, and they could win 3 or 4 games. So that's just how I look at it.
I'm just going to send it to you, Luke. Best case, worst case win total for this team.
I'm a little more optimistic than you guys. I look at my history at Vanderbilt. Based on an 11 games season, because we didn't go to 12 till later on in my career, our average wins was 4 and our average losses was 7. So I think that we'll win at least 4 this year. I always have to throw that caveat, unless you get a ton of injuries, that type of thing. But I just think this team, the games you talked about, Joey, Ball State and Alcorn State, got to win those, of course. Georgia State, you also have to win. But take a Virginia Tech. That's just like another SEC game. I mean, they're picked in the upper half, I guess, of the ACC. If you're able to play with that team in the fourth quarter, then that tells me that you got a shot against the South Carolina and Auburn and Kentucky. So to me, the high is 6 and the low is 4.
Okay, there it is. Another one here, whether we can answer this or not, we'll give it a shot. Where will the total offense and defense rank in the SEC? I'll say where it needs to rank. I mean, they were last in offense and defense yards last year. So maybe not last.
Yeah,
but all joking
that would be helpful.
All joking aside, I think towards that middle of the pack. I'm not saying middle of the pack. Right, and there's 16 teams now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So probably not going to be in the top 8, but be in the top half of that bottom 8 if you can. I don't even know if that's possible,
mm-hmm.
right? But not last, but also you probably need to be better than 15th or 14th too for this to really make a difference in the win column, I would say.
Yeah, and I also think it's more so about what you do in the games that you really have a chance in more than the overall numbers, because Bama's probably going to beat them by a good bit,
which will skew the numbers.
But if you put up a good game against South Carolina and Auburn and Kentucky, who cares if you're last?
Mm-hmm.
If you win 2 of those 3 games, who cares?
Yeah. Let's see here. Do you have some, Luke?
No, go ahead.
SR Kane, general takeaways on procedure, planning, and quality of the practices thus far. How well are things being run this time around compared to past seasons? I know you weren't here last fall camp. I'm sure you heard about how some of that was run. And Luke, you could probably answer this as well. But, I mean, for me, and I asked Clark about this yesterday, with the new offensive coaches and you've got some new defensive coaches, in my mind, I thought surely the format and style of the practice will change a little bit. And Clark, he didn't say, well, we changed it all, because obviously – overall, it is still very similar to last year, but he said we're always talking to, I'm talking to Kill, Beck, and other new coaches that they brought in about, hey, how can we change this format, and how can we bring some maybe an up tempo drill in? How do we red zone, stuff like that, but also different drills. I've noticed some different drills. I won't get into the specifics, but the style of play on offense you have to practice differently.
Mm-hmm.
And I figured, so I would say offensively, there's definitely some differences in drills, Luke, but the quality and kind of the overall procedure to me looks very similar to the last fall camp I was at last year.
I'll give you guys, you young smart guys, something from an old codger like myself. When you go out to a football practice, whether you're at Vanderbilt's, Tennessee's, Alabama's, MTSU's, any of them, you can tell one of two things. If you've got a lot of talent, you don't see a whole lot of sleds and pads on the field. If you're having to teach a lot of technique, you're going to see a lot of sleds, pads, and those type of teaching tools. So keep that in mind if you ever go to another practice anywhere else. If you go to Alabama's, you don't see near as many sleds and stuff on the field because all they're doing is working right here because they know they already got the physical and the technique stuff down. At Vanderbilt, you got to have the edge, so you got to work on the finer points of the game. And I've noticed today when I was over there, I was looking out on the field and I saw all the sleds and stuff that Clark has added on the defensive side of the ball. In fact, I understand they're having a couple of more teaching tools to come in that hadn't even gotten there yet. So that's something that has changed already.
Yeah, that's a good point. The offensive linemen getting after it on the sled. These
Klonakis loves the sleds.
Yeah.
The only thing I'll add, and that kind of goes with Klonakis, the intensity is much higher practice. And that's not like a procedural thing necessarily, but there's a lot more accountability around there, it seems, and it's just a lot more intense.
Yeah, and you get new players in too, building some confidence, not only for the coaches coaching the players, but, like on the offensive line, you bring in Chase Mitchell, Stephen Hubbard, and Lasoya. I know Lasoya was there in the spring, but maybe the returners like a Pitchford or Grayson Morgan or Charlie Clark, whoever, they up their game because you got some new dudes in there. So I think that helps as well. Last one here, and then we'll wrap it up from GVR 5804. I heard a discussion on NIL on the radio this morning about Tennessee. They said Tennessee is basically offering every player a very livable wage that they seem to say was lower than six figures. Then they have the opportunity to earn more if they start and excel, upwards of seven figures. Does Vanderbilt have similar processes, or to entice players, do we bring them in high and flat? I don't know that any of us know that, Luke, but NIL, we know that Vanderbilt has rejuvenated the program as a whole. I mean, with the offseason acquisitions, it's pretty easy to see. I don't know if you have a specific answer to that question and comparable to how Tennessee or maybe other SEC schools run their programs. But as we've talked about, we know that more money has come in than in the past, in the past couple of years under Clark.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add there. I can tell you this: I don't think Vanderbilt does anything like the University of Tennessee does in any part of their programs. I mean, and not just because it's Tennessee, but just state schools operate differently than a place like Vanderbilt or Wake Forest or Duke or Northwestern. So it's kind of
yeah, I think their NIL is fine, but not at that level. And I think going back to the media day, Clark Lee admitted they got behind the eight ball on NIL, and if they don't have a winning season this year or next year, I look back at that as a big reason why.
Yeah, the changes were made. So I think whether it compares to Tennessee or any SEC school, Vanderbilt football is doing what they think will work for them and is good enough. But
one other
go ahead, Luke.
I'm sorry. One other thing, guys. I do think the biggest difference in NIL at a Vanderbilt than say a Tennessee. Tennessee gave Nico, their quarterback, millions of dollars, so to speak. I don't think Vanderbilt's I don't think you'll ever see Vanderbilt do that to get a recruit. I don't think you'll see that. That's the difference. Using money to bring in a freshman. Vanderbilt won't do that, I don't think.
It does feel more of a higher risk play.
And a transfer-centric approach.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, I think you could see some similar off seasons like the last one. I don't think they'll have to do it next off season as well, but you also probably can't sign only 3 or 4 guys, right? So we'll see. I mean, we've seen Dabo Sweeney. I don't think he got a single transfer.
The transfers from high school.
Right. So, and we'll see how the season goes for Clemson this year. But either way, that'll wrap it up. Joey and I will be at fall camp tomorrow, and then they've got a practice Sunday as well. First scrimmage is next Saturday, not this Saturday, but next Saturday. It'll be a night scrimmage actually at the stadium. And then that next Saturday will be 11 a.m. So gearing up for August 31st for Virginia Tech. But Luke, I'll start with you. Any parting thoughts here?
No, I'm just looking forward to seeing you guys out there after my nephew leaves town next Tuesday. I'll be at a whole lot of the practices too, so I'll be seeing you guys out there. That'd be great.
Yeah, it'll be good. We're looking forward to that, and looking forward to the rest of the fall ball. It's been interesting, Billy. There's been a lot going on. Seemed like today was a better day than yesterday, though.
Yeah, and I asked that right away to Richie Hoskins, and he was like, "Yep, today was better." So Clark was also, he didn't speak to us today, but we heard some maybe not choice words, but he was not happy after yesterday's practice. So it was better today, but either way, Vanderbilt will be back out there tomorrow, and then Sunday I think a shorter practice, but Vanderbilt fall camp rolling on August 31st, Virginia Tech, and keep it right here on the Vandy Sports Podcast. For Joey Dwyer, that's Luke Wyatt. I'm Billy Derrick. Thanks for checking out another episode of the Vandy Sports Podcast.